workplace can sometimes become the ultimate breeding ground for some of the most toxic people imaginable. Whether they're your coworkers or even your boss, they can make your life a living hell. I am willing to bet that you know some people that even do it out of malice, simply to be spiteful and cause others around them discomfort for no reason at all. The following horror stories about nightmare coworkers will send a cold shiver down your spine, especially because many of you can likely relate to what these people did. Welcome back. Dark Recaps here. Before we continue, if you end up enjoying this video, I would appreciate you dropping a like to help me reach a wider audience. I would also be very grateful if you considered subscribing for more content like this. Let's begin. Their way or no way. Quote, "She was my boss and she is the most toxic employee I've ever witnessed. I think she's just kind of a terrible person in general actually, but she considers me her best friend. I am just so laid back that I don't get visibly distressed over her bullshit, but I personally think she's manipulative, psychotic, etc. She's been at the company for 24 years, so she thinks she can get away with anything she does. She's walked out crying, came back and handed in her resignation multiple times, and the owner of the company always smooths things over between her and the general manager, the person with whom she has the most conflict. Before he was hired, she thought she would have his job. When he first came, he made some mistakes and supposedly she was given a directive by the owner to teach him, the GM, how to do his job, so she's taken that and runs with it. She talks down to the GM, calls him a son of a bitch, fights him on decisions, challenges his authority, you name it. Controlling isn't even the right word. Everything had to be done her way or no way. I had a meeting once on a project without her and she came in my office and absolutely blasted me for leaving her out of it, and now I've created confusion, and she loved to say either people included her in absolutely every step/decision on a project or she was out of it. Basically, either she was in control or she wanted nothing to do with it. She had to be copied on every single email. Every decision had to be run by her first. Then she loved to complain that nothing got done without her, and why can't anyone just take care of things without having to interrupt her? She didn't reward initiative at all. In fact, if I did take initiative on things, she'd find a way to make it look like a mistake. Well, while you were busy doing that, this wasn't getting done. We had a pre-project meeting once, where we set out the beginning stages and I took the initiative to reach out to some vendors to let them know we'd started work on the project, and could they go ahead and start pulling together XYZ assets. When I went and told her I'd done it, she was completely nonplussed and then turned the conversation around into how nothing I do gets done fast enough, and just the other week I spent 2 hours on something that should have taken 30 minutes, her BS opinion. She loved the idea of a need-to-know basis. I'd get emails forwarded that had information deleted out of them because I might get confused if I knew too much. I also witnessed other people doing their jobs and coming to her with an anomaly, like a mystery account code, and her response was to say that nobody was told what it was for because they didn't need to know. She believed job security was being the only person that knew how to perform certain functions in our system, and she refused to train anyone how to do anything that she didn't absolutely have to. To this day, I have no idea how to run the reports I need. She's very, very manipulative, and I've gotten to the point that I don't believe anything she says. One day I came into work and she was in major bitch mode. She had a list of items that needed to be done by end of day, a list that included some very involved projects, and a more realistic timeline for getting the work done was like 3 days. But I hammered it out and got it all done in 1 day, which made her really happy. Then she launches into a story about going to the Humane Society over the weekend and feeling uncomfortable with the questions they were asking about her home life, etc. Her son has Down syndrome, and she said at a certain point he refused to pet the potential dog anymore because he felt uncomfortable. So for a week she's been going back and forth with this lady from the Humane Society, throwing her job title and salary around using them as reasons her household is stable enough to adopt this dog. In the end, they were denied and she blew like a geyser. She sent a particularly nasty email to the Humane Society volunteer about how she'd never consider adopting from them again and on, then went on social media and posted all over about the discrimination she witnessed because her son has Down syndrome and even got the National Pet Store involved. As a side note, I was reading some reviews of this particular Humane Society and lots of people had similar complaints about being denied animals. I guess they are very stringent in their vetting process. If I was trying to adopt an animal and had read those reviews in advance, I never would have even bothered. But anyway, I couldn't help but see the hypocrisy in her telling me nothing I did ever got done fast enough, yet she had time to email this lady about a dog multiple times and go online to post all over social media about it. She is incredibly threatened by other women. She is the only female on the director's team and is very proud of that fact. About a year ago, another female asked to join what was then the leadership team, and when they met to consider adding this other female, my boss threw a fit. Wanted to know what purpose she would serve and how much other work was now not going to get done because she would be spending her time in leadership meetings instead of leading her team and on. They ended up quietly adding the other female and included her name in the leadership email group. My boss would purposely address emails to the individual members of the leadership team and omit the newly added female employee. Then, she would tattle on the same employee and point out all the mistakes being made in her department to the GM. Eventually, the leadership group became the director's team, and guess which employee was not made a director? This has gotten long, but these are some of the highlights of working for this nutcase. I have been looking for a new job for 4 months. Wish me luck. End quote. No talking during your shift. Quote. My old boss was a nutcase. She removed her cubicle wall so she could watch us. No one was allowed to come talk to us about work or request anything from us without going through her first. If anyone came to our area to talk to us, she would come stomping out of her cube and interrupt. She would follow us and eavesdrop on our conversations, but only hear parts of them and then get angry because she misunderstood what she heard. She required us to send our work to her, which she would then send to whomever it was we were supposed to be working with, but take all the credit. Except she didn't know anything, so she would have to come back with a million questions about it if they had any questions. She would yell at us on the floor. Once she made a girl on my team cry and then followed her to the bathroom to yell at her some more. Her manager had to be called in to separate them. She would wander around through other departments trying to enforce a dress code on them. And finally, she told my coworker she got low scores on her reviews because she was pregnant. Even after all that, it took more than a year of huge turnover in everyone on our team, plus countless people in other departments, making formal complaints about her, for HR to finally pull the trigger because she was buddies with the head of the HR department. End quote. Hated working with others. Quote. I worked with a middle-aged woman who treated all her job duties as her personal fiefdom, problem being, she sucked at her job and constantly needed help completing her assignments. Whenever I was assigned to assist her, she would get angry and possessive of her work, demanding that everything be done to her standards and refusing to relinquish tasks to the point that management was forced to intervene. I mostly laughed off her behavior. Eventually, I was promoted, upsetting her to no end, and she accused my male boss of misogyny, ignoring the fact that this multi-million-dollar firm was helmed by a woman, and implied that I didn't deserve the position, which pissed me off. Somehow, she kept her job. At this point, our relationship had devolved into a slow-simmering feud interspersed with occasional arguments, me taking great pleasure in periodically finishing her work for her, and her talking an insane amount of shit about me to my coworkers, which of course immediately got back to me. However, I eventually won the feud through the simple act of helping her carry a box of documents to her car. You see, she occasionally dropped the afternoon mailings off at the post office, and for whatever reason that day there was a mountain of mail. Her being a bit long in the tooth, she asked me if I would carry the box to her car, which I of course did. When she popped open her car door, a huge waft of skunky-ass weed stank hit me. It smelled like she had at least an ounce of some dank shit in her glove box. I smoke a lot of weed, but you couldn't really tell at the time because of my white-collar facade. You can definitely tell these days because I look like the eponymous Florida man, which is okay because I live in Florida. So when I looked this woman in the face and said, "Wow, don't get pulled over on the way home or I'll have to do all your work," her jaw literally dropped. Now, I would never have turned her in, but she didn't know that, so until I quit that job with malicious intent, another story for another thread, I didn't have any more problems with her. End quote. Dispensed emergency supplies illegally. Quote, this happened a few years back. I'm a pharmacist in a rural area. Being in a rural area, it is sometimes difficult to hire pharmacy technicians who are both good at the job and willing to work for what my company pays. This shallow applicant pool led us to hiring Sharon. Sharon was in her mid-40s, giving her about 20 years on me. She had a problem accepting my authority, reminding me almost daily how she had a daughter a year older than me. When I asked Sharon to do something she didn't want to do, she would become temporarily deaf and very engrossed in whatever activity she wanted to do. When I complained to the pharmacy manager, he promised to talk to her every time, and then never did because he was a spineless, weaselly thief severely lacking in testicular fortitude, and ended up getting fired for those reasons further down the line. Sharon was also under 5 feet tall. To compensate for this, she brought a used, unwashed pair of grill tongs to use as a grabber for items she couldn't reach. She couldn't reach about half the items on the shelf. She filled about 15 prescriptions and got grease all over the stock bottles before I noticed and made her go wash the tongs. Being a middle-aged woman, she was prone to hot flashes. I am usually cold at room temperature and wear sweaters to work in summer to compensate for the AC unit. Sharon got the brilliant idea to heat a bag of rice in the microwave and put it on the thermostat to force the AC to come on, which I suspect was out of spite as much as for her comfort. One day, she set the timer to 10 minutes and fell asleep in the break room. More on that later. The entire store smelled like burnt rice for hours. The store manager went nuclear. When I was working with Sharon, customers would often assume she was the pharmacist and ask her questions that only a pharmacist could answer. She would attempt to perform patient consultations, which is illegal in my state, then wear her ass on her shoulders the rest of the day after I jumped in and corrected her. On a few other occasions, she dispensed emergency supplies to patients under a floater pharmacist's login without asking him, which is also illegal. One of the emergency supplies was for a drug in an unbreakable package, which she broke, rendering it unsellable and damaging around $400 worth of product. She and her common-law husband would beat the shit out of each other and she would come in with bruises in conspicuous places. When they broke up, she closed out all his prescriptions in our computer system, which ended up being a pain in my ass more than his, because I had to fix all of it. Skimming over the rest of the petty bullshit, including multiple absences and tardies, only on days she worked with me, what finally ended her employment was smoking meth in her vehicle in the parking lot on her lunch break. We didn't catch her in the act, but she came back obviously high on something and unable to control her movements. Loss prevention got involved. Rather than terminating her employment, she was put on a program requiring her to check in to see if she had to be drug tested daily. Failure to do so meant automatic termination. Shortly after, she was arrested for domestic violence with the common-law ex-husband, meaning she didn't check in the following day. Bye-bye Sharon, and good effing riddance. End quote. The violent coworker. Quote, I briefly had a coworker at my current job at a local grocery store. We'll just call him Fred. Fred is one of those people who's always talking on his phone in the break room, and that's my personal pet peeve at work. More often than not, he's usually arguing with his girlfriend, and he doesn't seem to care that anyone's listening. He'd do other annoying, gross things like chewing with his mouth wide open and wiping his boogers all over the place, but then there was one day when he tried to flush a Hot Pocket down the toilet. Needless to say that it didn't play out so well, and that temporarily put an end to our closest employee restroom right by the break room. He surprisingly didn't get fired over that, but he did get fired when one of his old high school teachers came in shopping and he threw a whole sack of potatoes at her. She was an elderly woman who got seriously injured, and both the ambulance and the cops had to get involved. I never did hear about what happened to his old teacher, but Fred, on the other hand, is currently in jail for not only assaulting his teacher, but he apparently also attacked his lawyer for reasons unknown. That's Fred. End quote. The corrupt company. Quote, I am going through a court thing with my ex-coworker at the moment, actually. She's a nurse that apparently had her license taken away prior to her hire at my work. Our HR didn't bother checking, I guess. The first care meeting we had with her, she started accusing the black staff for stealing. She had been there a week and didn't know what she was talking about. The team ran the best out of the whole company. She was determined to make everyone feel uncomfortable. She'd stand near the bathroom pretending to wait to go inside, while listening to people chat in the kitchen/staff room. The bathroom was a one-person bathroom and was obvious when no one was inside it. She'd chase staff down the hallways screaming at them for stealing. Then when they showed her they had nothing in their hands, she'd say, I wasn't yelling at you, I was yelling at myself. She'd tell the black social worker she shouldn't wear straight wigs because black people don't have straight hair. She'd also tell the staff they weren't working hard enough to get a raise when they asked for one in a meeting with one of the bosses. He was racist too, so he promoted her. Finally, after months of this bullcrap, she finally messed up badly enough. A client had to go to hospital due to her negligence, and the family demanded to have a meeting about her attitude. She refused to acknowledge that she messed up, tried to blame me for not reminding her that lunch was at 12 p.m. and told HR if she was going to get in trouble, she'd quit. My social worker friend who was fired for complaining about this nurse's racism is currently in a court battle with the company and how they received tons of complaints about her racism crap and did nothing. F that company. End quote. Fake sickness. Quote, I used to work in a call center, and although we had our share of terrible hires, one girl stood out. She would regularly ignore her phone because she didn't feel like taking calls and would spend all her time on Facebook, etc. One day she told the staff she was going in for a major operation and would be off for 2 weeks. Although she wasn't the most popular staff member at this point, everyone still got her a card and put money in to buy her some gifts for when she was off work. About 3 days into her absence and during what would have been her surgery time, another girl spotted her shopping for makeup with friends and then took photos of her. When the girl came back and she was met with death stares from 100 colleagues, and when asked how her operation was, she handed up and said she was still in pain. The manager immediately screamed at her to get in his office and was so loud that the rest of the workplace could hear every word. HR got involved and she was gone in 24 hours, which was followed by her attempt to sue for unfair dismissal. Thankfully, she didn't get far. End quote. A source of bad energy. Quote, a vet's office I worked for hired a girl to work as a tech whose only relevant experience was working in a non-medical boarding facility. She thought she was hot stuff. She expected to waltz right in with zero medical experience and get promoted to management above techs that had been working there for years, by sucking up to the bosses. Problem was, not only did she not have the experience, she also lacked the work ethic and desire to actually do any of the tech stuff. She just wanted to be able to cuddle puppies, sit at a computer, and boss PNs around. So, instead of learning how to do the job better, or actually putting in any effort, she decides the best way to get promoted is to make everyone else look bad and feel miserable. When things didn't go her way, she would make fake meritless complaints that her coworkers were being mean to her. Every week, someone was brought into the office about it. The thing is, the other 20-odd employees pointed out that, maybe, just maybe, if she was the one having problems with everybody, it could have been her. In the end, we lost about half the staff because of this chick. Ended up having to hire folks with no veterinary experience to replace people that had been there 7+ years. So, it wasn't just the staff that suffered. Quality of care took a noticeable hit. I stuck around for another year, but finally between her and the by then obvious management problems, I had enough. After I left, she got bold enough to send threatening text messages to a couple of coworkers. We all had each other's numbers to coordinate weekend duties. They reported her to the cops, and they arrested her while she was at work. If not for that, she'd probably still be there kissing the right asses while running off staff. End quote. The creepy baker. Quote, "Okay, this may not be my most hellish coworker, but I have a weird one for you. My first ever job was at a coffee shop chain. The location I was at was connected to a gas station/convenience store. We kinda had an L-shaped corner of the store. As such, we didn't have a ton of space, including room for the larger ovens needed to cook bagels. So instead, we would have our bagels delivered to us from another location down the road. For a while the baker was this really weird, quiet girl who seemed to lack social self-awareness. She always seemed a little unclean and just linger a little too long around people without really saying anything. Honestly, she just put out not quite right vibes. Anyway, one day I head in at 6 and there are no bagels. I ask my manager if the store down the road was running behind or if they had a call out. Both were fairly common. My manager points to the rack of newspapers the convenience store had by the entrance and tells me to read the headline. Apparently the weird girl was in FBI custody. Basically, there was a couple who had kidnapped a minor. I won't get into why, as it may be a trigger warning for some. Weird girl was renting a room from the couple, knew what was happening and never told anyone. Somehow they were all found out and arrested, and the young girl was reunited with her family. Reading the story, the whole thing felt like a Twilight Zone." End quote. Working with coworkers from hell can be a struggle, but there is one upside. They might actually force you to make positive life changes that end up benefiting you. Studies have shown that people typically pick up new behaviors from people they interact with regularly. So, if you're constantly dealing with a colleague who has bad habits that are messing up your life and your goals, it's important that you make changes to that situation. Have you ever experienced some bad energy from your coworker before? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider leaving a like on this video. If you got all the way to the end, you might as well subscribe to me now. Dark Recaps. Thanks. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.